Greetings, Kerbinauts. This is Kerbal Space Program. I'm Bob Fitch, and this is episode number 11 of Project Odyssey. And I have myself a little bit of cold, but the show must go on. So if I sound different, that's why. Just a little bit sick. Anyway, so previously on Project Odyssey, we were lining ourselves up here with the moon. What we were trying to do was launch a satellite that was going to go and investigate a nearby asteroid. But in the middle of that, we hit the SOI of the moon with Jebediah's craft that's going to go rescue Hadfield. So we had tried to switch over and do that, although it took a little time. So that was going to change when we were going to get our launch window for the asteroid. Right here, we're lowering our periapsis down onto the surface so that when we decouple that stage, it'll go down and be destroyed. And then we boosted our orbit back up. But when I switched back over to launch my satellite, where's Kerbin? Well, thinking that it was just some kind of visual glitch, I decided to give it a try anyway and try launching that and see what would happen. And that didn't turn out so well because, well, I don't know, a few things must have gone wrong at the same time. I think maybe the fairing was a little bit too tight on the payload and it was throwing things off. I couldn't see the ground, so that was a little distracting as well. I think I had not noticed that my nav ball was set to orbit rather than surface, so I was heading on the wrong vector. Ultimately, it was just a comedy of errors, and that thing headed back down. And I wanted to see what's going to happen when this crashes. Can it really crash, or is it going to go through the surface? But I guess the surface is still there. It's just not rendering any of it. We can see that the wreckage here is laying on something, so I'm thinking, well, we'll go back and we'll just try again. Oh look, their ground is here, but now look at the launch clamps. For some reason it duplicated my launch clamp and then it kind of cracked that in half. That is not going to fly correctly. So this time we reload completely. KSP has been shut down and restarted, and now everything seems to be in order. So whatever happened, it was some sort of memory corruption or whatnot, and we really needed to just shut down and start over again. But here we go. We're underway, and we have this new satellite that I'll show you in the VIB in just a moment. It has some parts on it that come from a different science mod. It's called D-Magic, and it has some really cool looking parts on it for doing science. Now this isn't career mode, so I'm not actually getting any science points out of anything that I might be doing. However, I want to keep the illusion that that's what's going on. I want to make sure that they're continuing to actually have a variety of scientific instruments on anything that they're trying to claim is going out to actually do science. It makes sense, right? So we're boosting way up here because we have our orbit set to the same inclination of the target, and we have to go way out in order to meet that orbit. It's quite a long ways out. We're testing out the scientific instruments before we get too far away from Kerbin. If anything were to go wrong, we would want to know about it now. We don't want to get to the asteroid and find out that something isn't working. So everything's being brought out, and then once that all looks like it's in good shape, they'll all be brought back in again because we don't need them on until we actually get to the asteroid. So it looks like things are in good shape. We'll pull them all back in again now, and then we'll head over to intercept the asteroid's actual orbit. I have not checked yet to see exactly how many days it's going to be before that asteroid comes around to where we're going to be intercepting it. But the plan here is to just get out onto the right path, and then we'll let time go by doing other things, and when it actually gets into range, then we'll go and investigate. Now I set my orbit right there so that the descending node was intercepting the asteroid's orbit, and that is now allowing me to boost up my orbit while also maintaining the same inclination as the target in case I needed to do a slight adjustment. We've almost got an intercept with a close approach markers, getting closer, and there we go. So we're coming in pretty close on it. Still have not checked to see how far away it is really, but while I was letting it go a little bit, it said oxygen depleted at the Odyssey Station. So I decided to come over here and go, well, that can't possibly be true. And I look and it says there's 10 days of oxygen remaining, so I know that that's going to last with 3 Kerbals on board, more than 3 days. And so there must be something else going on. Well, I clicked on the different things and it said some stuff wasn't actually being produced because it was full. Like, we couldn't put more hydrogen in the hydrogen tank because it was full. And for some reason, it wasn't allowing the actual processor to function while that was the case. So I decided to dump some of the oxygen and some of the methane and stuff like that out of those tanks, even though technically I shouldn't need to. I'll go back and I'll take a look at that later to see whether or not there's some problem with that, but for now we're just going to dump it, and hopefully that will make everything start to function correctly. We still have 3 days of oxygen, so I'm not really worried about it. Also, while I'm here, I've noticed that I've had this Centaur injection stage that brought up our life support module attached to it for a very long time now. So I'm finally getting around to decoupling it because I don't think that I'm going to need it for anything. I wasn't entirely sure why I was keeping it attached outside of maybe being able to use its engine to boost the orbit, but we're above 300 kilometers on the station, so I don't really see any reason why I needed to keep it. Now, what I might have done is noticed before it was too late here that I still had a lot of fuel in this thing, and I could have transferred some of it over before I decoupled, but I forgot, and it wasn't until I was right about here probably re-entering. It's like, oh no, look at all the fuel that I'm about to lose. Oh well, I should have thought of that then. It didn't actually burn up correctly. I'm not sure why. Another deadly re-entry thing, maybe where it's showing up as a shielded part, which I've had problems with before, but oh well, it makes its way down through the atmosphere looking really pretty, at least, while that sunset is going down there in the back, and then it ultimately ends up in the ocean. Swoosh! Anyway, so that's going to do it for that stage, and we're going to now move back out again. Oh, look at that, floating engine. Yes, because they're made of styrofoam. We already know that engines are made out of styrofoam, so therefore they float. Yeah, we're going to go back out here, and now I want to launch another rocket that is going to the space station. Odyssey Station needs to have some parts brought to it that we can use to go and do EVAs and repair the thing there, repair that pryolizer that's for our life support system, as well as we might as well bring up a little oxygen just in case something's still going wrong. And outside of that, we're going to pack any extra parts that are up there inside some crates from the Kerbal attachment system that are being launched inside that fairing there. Also, this is another attempt to go directly from the surface to rendezvous at the station without actually going out to the map view or creating any maneuver nodes. So as you can see, we're angling ourselves using just that MechJeb window where it shows me my relative inclination, and if I can keep that down to below 1%, I'm doing really well. And also that close approach distance. If the closest approach distance can get down to 1 kilometer or so, then we'll be intercepting, and I won't ever have to have looked anyway, just like we did in that other episode where I've done this once. I'm pretty much just trying it again to see if the other time was a fluke. But I don't know if I'll do this every single time I launch now. But once again, because I'm trying it on this one, I figured I would throw an uncut launch attempt in here for you, just to prove that it's actually working. There's no cheatery going on or anything like that. I noticed my apoapsis is getting up there, so we must be really close. And let's see, close approach distance, 1.6 kilometers. Okay, well, or is that at 1.8? We're going to want to bring that down a little bit further, but at this point, we are closing in on the station, and there it is. So once again, it's not a fluke. This actually works. You can just take off from the ground, go straight up, especially in these equatorial orbits. If it were in an inclined orbit like I had done on my Project Gateway, where it was at 51.6 degrees, maybe it would be harder. I don't know. Probably wouldn't. As long as I keep an eye on that relative inclination and try to bring that down. Seems like it should come out the same way. Anyway, while we're coming in close on the station here, this will give me a chance to talk about a little problem we're about to face, as well as some things that I was talking in a previous episode about doing. So what I had been talking about doing was changing the way that my mono and fuels were named, because I've been playing around a lot with the real solar system. And I was thinking, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I put like hydrazine instead of monopropellant, and use something like liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen instead of just saying it was fuel and oxidizer. Use something more realistic, you know, UDMH, something like that. Well, it turns out that that's not going to work, because the values for how much everything has in mass, they're already set. Now here you can see I have run out of monopropellant. And that was the problem that I forgot about, or the problem that I had is where I forgot about the fact that I wanted to increase the amount of mono that's in my Centaur and Minotaur stages. And because I hadn't done that, I ran out here. So I was going to increase the default value. Oh, look, bouncy fairings. Yep, everything's made out of styrofoam and bouncy rubber balls. Well, anyway, we're going to increase the amount of monopropellant that's in by default on the Minotaur and the Centaur stages, so that from now on, whenever I'm launching anything where I'm using those in order to do maneuvering, I will have enough mono in them. I'm not going to be able to name things like hydrazine or UDMH or anything like that. If I had done that from the very beginning of Project Odyssey, then it would have been fine, but because I didn't do it from the beginning, it's too late to go back and change everything, because all my sizes and my masses and everything like that would be different, and so I probably wouldn't be able to launch any of my rockets anymore if I did that. I considered looking for some sort of fuel that was actually very similar to what comes with the stock game in terms of its density per liter, let's call it. And it just so happens that the regular stock game is kind of close to a bunch of different things that in real life, but it's not perfect, so there just wasn't any good combination. Now you can see here I'm using my monopropellant and I've increased the amount that I have in it up to 100. I'm using that mono to make slight orbital adjustments, and now we have our intercept coming in at around 300 to 400, say 350 meters. So that's pretty good. You can see it over there. We're coming in. But first, let's go take a look at what this rocket looks like down in the VAB. So this Resupply, it's a very, very simple Manticore lower stage with a Minotaur upper stage, a modified Minotaur. This is version 2 now that has more monopropellant in it. Up in here in the fairing, we've just got some pretty simple internals here. A docking port on top of some truss pieces, and some boxes here from Kerbal Attachment System, an oxygen tank, some RCS jets, and some lights. Oh, there's a battery there too, just in case, because I kept getting those warnings about battery power being low, so I was going to put an extra battery on there and just transfer most of the electricity over and hope that that makes it stop complaining about the electricity. Although I know there's enough electricity on there, it got a little bit too low, and now it needs to recharge before it stops complaining. While we're in here, last episode we didn't actually take a look at the solar array that went up to the station. So this was a Gorgon lower stage with a Centaur up in... Oh, come on. Where are you? Reconnect. There we go. So we'll pull away that big fairing there. We have that Centaur lower stage, but I put extra monopropellant in it to make sure that I could dock it properly. And it was connected to a large docking port here, and there's a docking port up here as well. And let's see, a whole bunch of ladders that all go down the side of it, although that's actually part of the welded part there. If we go over here into the utilities tab, you're going to see that right there is our solar array, all welded together as one piece. I put these docking ports on the sides there, and we have, of course, the actual solar panels. But other than that, not really a whole lot. These are on here just for maneuvering, and this is going to get removed by EVA once we get a chance to do that. There's lights on the outside of it, of course, and that's it. All of that is the one thing. You might notice that I have a large gyroscope in here. So unlike the real ISS where they would use the Z truss there, the Z1, and have the gyroscopes on there, I have my big gyroscope in the middle of this, right sandwiched in between well, I guess it's two sides, so it's 4 big globes of liquid fuel and oxidizer that we can use to refuel anything that gets up to the station, or to transfer over extra fuel that we have on any kind of booster stages. Back out here in our orbit, we're coming in close to Odyssey Station now, so it's time to throttle up the engines and get ourselves on that intercept. So I'm looking at that left side close approach. Now that I see both close approaches are within range of each other, that means that we're going to be really close to the station for a very long time, allowing me to come around into the sun so that we can dock over here. I noticed that it kept saying there that electricity was low on the station, and then it said the electricity was depleted, and that doesn't make any sense because I have checked those solar panels and they are facing the sun, they're all out, they are definitely providing enough power. I think we just need to make sure that we have a lot of it before we go around the dark side again. Make sure all the solar panels are definitely collecting as much as they can here, and then maybe that thing will stop complaining. But anyway, that's why we put that battery on this stage. You can see we used our mono to get ourselves lined up with the station, and from a pretty far distance, and now we're coming in close, so we're going to do that docking, and then either Bill will decide who's going to go out, or maybe they'll draw straws to see who's going to go on the EVA. They're probably all really excited to go and do some sort of EVA, because this is the first time that anything like that has happened on this particular station. Now while I'm coming in here, I have been noticing that I've got a really low frame rate for such a small station, and that makes me think that maybe what's going on is some DLL, some mod is using up a bunch of extra time. Pretty soon here, I decide to take a look at my debug log, because sometimes if you're having some really low frame rates when you can't explain why, it's probably time to go check your debug log and see if anything is throwing exceptions, or at the very least warnings. So that's what I'm going to do. As soon as I get this docked up, I'm going to pull open that debug log, and you're going to see that the TAC life support system is throwing a bunch of warnings right there. So as it turns out, the problem is it doesn't yet know how to handle the 023.5 new flow rate for resources moving around the station, and I had set up my methane to use the new flow rate, and since it doesn't handle that, that's why it hasn't been actually working. I think this also helps explain what's going on with the slowdown, because it keeps on running through its DLL there, its module, and throwing these warnings like crazy. So that's what's happening. Meanwhile, Neil is out here doing a little EVA, running up and down the length of the station, checking things out and doing his repairs on the life support system, and trying to grab some of the little bits to put them in those boxes, but I have to add the module that makes them grabbable. I forgot to do that, so we'll come back and do that a little bit later.
Neil, are you almost done out there? I'm detecting another anomaly signature. I think it's Hadfield. We need to let Jem know.
This is Jebediah at the moon. Yes, I'm seeing it too, and I've already begun my maneuver. We should be coming down soon, right through where he's going to arrive through that anomaly. Lowering my orbit now. Burn is completed. We're almost in position. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, anomaly. And there he is. I see him. Hello? Is anybody there? Hadfield, this is Jebediah. I've got a craft. Look above you.
Jeb, I'm almost out of life support. Help!
Don't worry, Hadfield. I'm coming in now. I'm going to get you before you slip back into the wormhole.
Help, Jeb.
This is Jebediah to Mission Control. Hadfield is losing consciousness. I'm going to have to go outside myself to help him. I'll hook up my suit to his and transfer over some oxygen. That should wake him long enough so that he can get into the ship. I'm leaving the capsule now. I'm going to go get Hadfield. Whoa, what was that? I think we've slipped back into the wormhole. Hold on, Hadfield, I'm coming. Let me just hook my suit up to yours. There you go. Alright, now get up to the ship. We can still get out of this wormhole if we move quickly. Okay, thanks, Jeb. This is Jebediah reporting from the alternate dimension. Everything is distorted here. Distances are further apart. Time is probably moving differently for us relative to back home. And the capsule may have been damaged, but I think I can still get us out of here and get home.
So Jeb and Hadfield have managed to escape the wormhole and come back to our dimension once again. And this time, if they can just get away from the moon, I think they'll be safe. However, they've lost attitude control on the capsule. It was damaged in that transition between dimensions. So what Jeb needs to do now is throttle up the engine when it's pointing prograde, and then throttle back again whenever he's pointing retrograde. So right here, he was trying to go easy, but it didn't turn out very well, which means now the plan is to just wait until it's coming around through the prograde and then just throttle to 100% for as long as possible. So here he goes now. He's throttling up, getting closer to that prograde, and there it goes. Throttle to 100%, and then as it moves back further away, then we throttle completely down. And by doing that several times in a row, he's going to be able to slowly extend that apoapsis out until it's escaping the moon and coming back toward Kerbin. There's enough fuel, so it's not really a question of fuel, it's just a question of whether or not they're going to be able to tolerate all of that rotation that's going there. And you know, they might be getting a little sick from all the spinning. Using this technique, he has managed to now escape the moon's influence, once he gets further away from it, of course. Right now he's still really close, but technically he has escaped the influence. And then a few more throttles near that prograde, and despite all that spinning, they are now coming back through the lower atmosphere of Kerbin. So we'll just let this zip ahead just a little bit here, and once it gets to where they're on that trajectory that's going to bring them back to Kerbin, I'm going to let time just go normally from here. I'll set a maneuver node just so the alarm clock will wake me up at the right time. So now let's go look at a satellite. So here's our Asteroid scanning satellite, and just like all of our other small satellites, this one goes up on a Manticore lower stage and a Minotaur second stage. It had a very large, long fairing relative to these smaller kinds of satellites. And then we see here that we have these new D-Magic scanning devices. I had this magnetic boom thing here on one of those hinges that lets me rotate it out, and that's why I have boom up here in the servo controls right here. And then we have this, I can actually open these up so you can see what they look like in here. So that's a big boom, and that, ooh, there we go. And that one is just like a little scanner thing, and this is a bunch of antenna that come and stick out. It's kind of cool looking. Move that out of the way so you can see it better. There you go. And of course there's some typical solar panels, monopropellant. Got the bigger engine on there so that I can intercept it a little faster once we actually get to the satellite. We have our attitude control CPU and the RCS, some lights, scanner CPU, batteries, antenna CPU. So yeah, that pretty much covers that one. So before we're completely done here, I'm going to do a little recap on where we are. So the things we're waiting for, we have this satellite that's on its way down here. It's going to come down, and when it hits that maneuver node, then we're going to make our move in order to intercept this asteroid right here. If we look over here, we also, let me activate this one, we also have this, our capsule that has Jebediah and Hadfield. They're on their way back, and when they get to that maneuver node, that'll hit my alarm clock and wake me up to go and manage them doing their re-entry so that they can get home. We of course have the station over here orbiting around Kerbin, and there's probably a few more things that we're going to want to do with that. And then we have our different satellites all around. We have one at the moon, a couple on the two sides here for communications all around here, and that's about it. However, there are some other things that we're going to want to send up, but we'll find out more about those in the next episode of Project Odyssey. So until then, I will see you later, Kerbinauts.